What's going on, everybody? C4 here, and welcome back to today's video. We're going to be taking a look and continuing our 2019 draft prep by taking a look at my top 10 cornerbacks for the upcoming 2019 draft. Very good draft class for cornerbacks. I am a fan of pretty much all 10 of the guys that I'm going to list and rank here today. And again, I tend to take certain emphasis on positions that maybe my Philadelphia Eagles need. And while I do think cornerback is going to be a promising position for my Eagles, still we could definitely look at adding one of these guys to, improve some depth and, get some more bodies back there. Because the Eagles were an absolute turnstile in terms of healthy cornerback play last year. But before we jump into my 2.0 top 10 rankings, we need to look at my original rankings from way back at the beginning of college football season. So here we go. Honorable mentions was Michael Jackson and Brian Peavy. And then my top 10 went as followed. At number 10, Derek Beatty from Kentucky. Number 9, Jamal Peters from Mississippi State. Number 8, Iman Marshall from USC. Number 7, Kendall Sheffield from Ohio State. 6 was Julian Love from Notre Dame. 5 was Amani Oruwariye from Penn State. 4 was TRAYVON MULLEN from Clemson. 3 was Byron Murphy from Washington. 2 was DeAndre Baker from Georgia. And 1 was Greedy Williams from LSU. Now, how have things changed from list 1 to list 2? Top tier, the top end, still stays pretty much the same. I've been pretty comfortable on my top 5-ish for most of the college football season, but there are definitely some new names that have shown up over their just general high level of play last season and what we've seen in the limited offseason Senior Bowl, so on and so forth. So without further ado, before we jump into my full top 10 rankings, we do have some new honorable mentions. In my 4 honorable mentions, first up, we have Lonnie Johnson Jr. from Kentucky, big, long, rangy corner. We also have Iman Marshall, who originally was at number 8. Has slipped just down out to the honorable mentions, but I do think he will be a nice day 3 value pickup. We have Kendall Sheffield from Ohio State, who, if he runs in the 4.3, something like that, the combine could crack into the top 10, but I still think a little bit raw from a technical aspect as corner. And last, we got Brian Peavy from Iowa State, Mr. Pro Football Focus himself. I think someone is going to get a very good value corner on day 3. That being said, now it's time to jump into the top 10. And at number 10, we have Michael Jackson. Not the Michael Jackson, or the one that liked hanging out with little kids. No, this is Michael Jackson, 6'1", 200-pound corner from the U in 2018. 42 tackles, 3.5 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks, and 6 pass breakups. Positives, press man corner, and he's pretty well built. He looks like a tremendous athlete, and I think he could potentially move to safety to reach his highest ceiling as an NFL player. And because, you might have that tweener ability between corner and safety, some teams will have that as added value. Other people say, well, you're not really good enough to play either. You're a little bit more of a project player, which I think is kind of the bracket that Michael Jackson falls under. But for the combine, that's kind of goes in the negative, I guess. I've been holding it against all these prospects. I think that when the combine is going to be important to your draft stock, I think that is more of a negative than a positive, because if you have a average combine or just a bad combine, draft stock stays low. And the only way you can go up is if you, surprise people, do better than a lot of people expected. Because for Michael Jackson, sometimes he looks fast, sometimes he looks like he's stuck in the mud. So I haven't seen a lot of consistency to his speed, which is obviously very, very big for outside corners at the National Football League level. But still, because there is some upside, and the fact that he could move to safety and be an even better prospect, is why he's coming in at number 10. At number 9, we have Rock Ya-Sin, 5'11", 190 pounds, out of Temple. 2018 stats, he had 47 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 2 interceptions, and 12 pass breakups. Positive for him, again, another press man corner. He's very, very aggressive, good tackler, well built, has a NFL caliber body. I mean, it sounds like we're talking about bodybuilders, but you know what I'm saying. Like, he's a guy that he's not going to have to worry about getting out muscled more often than not, like some of the other guys we will talk about that kind of need to get on that strength and conditioning program, maybe get on some under-the-table Lane Johnson subs. The negatives, I've seen he left a lot of meat on the bone at times. Kind of remind me of Asante Samuel at times for the Philadelphia Eagles, where, like, you get a lot of pass breakups, you get a lot of, incompletes. But really, if you, had that little extra bit to offer, they would be turnovers. They would be turnovers after turnovers. So I feel like he could have had more turnovers than what he did at Temple. And looking at the Draft Network, which is a really, really good resource, this is something they picked up on and they were pretty adamant about. I didn't necessarily see it. But Ben Solak from the Draft Network said he had really iffy footwork, so credit to him for picking that up, and that is apparently a weakness that I have seen across a couple different scouting reports. Didn't necessarily jump off the table for me when I was watching his tape, but then again, there's only so much you could see from like 4 or 5 chop-ups. I assume that, when there's smoke, there's fire when it comes to his footwork, but that can be corrected by a good DBs coach. So I think Michael Jackson, I definitely think Michael Jackson's going to go day 3. But I think when you start looking at a guy like Rock Ya-Sin, he's going to be a guy that we're going to be talking about. Rounds 5 would probably be his floor. I think his ceiling will be round 3. That's still going to be good value for someone that might want to get a slightly undersized outside corner. Philadelphia. Going to number 8, I have Jimmy Moreland, 5'10", 175 pounds, out of James Madison. He is my small school prospect, along with Keelan Doss from UC Davis, that I am absolutely on board with. Jimmy Moreland in 2018, 56 tackles, 7.5 tackles for loss, a sack and a half, 5 picks, 15 pass deflections, 3 pick sixes. When you look at the positives, ultra productive corner. He's done that over the last couple of years at James Madison. Very aggressive. Don't let the size and stature fool you. Yes, he's going to play nickel, but he's super, super aggressive at 175 pounds. Feisty enough that he's constantly in your face. He's annoying. He's like a goddamn bee or hornet. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, kind of small, but they just piss you off enough. They're right in your face all the time. And I think he will test well at the combine for that size. Should show great agility and straight line speed. But the negatives, obviously, size limitations. He's going to be kind of pigeonholed as a nickel corner. The level of competition concerns coming from Div 2. And he did have some off-the-field issues at his time there. It doesn't seem too prevalent nowadays, but it is still something in his background that teams will look up and could hold against him. I think where Rocky Sin could potentially squeak into the 3rd round, I think Jimmy Moreland is more of a 4 to 6, somewhere in that territory, unless he tests very, very well at the combine. But I think when push comes to shove, I have him ranked a little bit higher. I'm a big fan. I would not be surprised if a lot of if whatever team picks him is got to go, we got this corner from James Madison, what? And then watch him make your final 53. Go to corner number 7. We have TRAYVON MULLEN, 6'1", 190 pounds, out of Clemson in 2018. 36 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, an interception, and 3 pass breakups. What you get with TRAYVON MULLEN is a press man corner who should test well at the combine. From most scouts, it does think that he has, with that size, with that length, has a chance to run the low 4.4s, which, you know, obviously the height, weight, speed is going to get some team to probably draft him, overdraft him, maybe a round higher than what he should. When you look at his play style, it's kind of, I haven't seen it a whole lot of other scouting reports, so I'm going to kind of stick with it myself. I think he could move to safety. When I look at the way that he plays and his body type, I think he probably could bulk up a little bit, probably get around 6'1", 200, 205, and then look at playing free safety. The negatives for him are limited production, and really outside of the national championship game against Alabama this year where he had an interception and a sack, I personally have never seen him because I watch a lot of full Clemson games, and I still believe that is the best way to scout someone. Chop-ups are fine because obviously it's all condensed. I just like getting a feel of the game, and then you can kind of get that, like, that je ne sais quoi, if you will, of understanding a prospect, because you get, like, when the game, like when you watch a chop up, you don't really understand the implications of a game. You don't understand, you know, is there a comeback brewing, and does this player help that comeback? Does he stop the other team's comeback? Like, I really do think the best way to evaluate prospects is just watching full games, and I've watched a lot of Clemson. I'm a fan of watching Clemson. They're my ACC team. And I've never really seen, outside of that Alabama game, even then he got picked on a couple times, TRAYVON MULLEN have a really good game. So he is probably the top prospect that I've seen a lot of people, especially if you look at like Matt Miller on Bleacher Report. He's one of the easier and more reputable, notable scouts, popular scouts. He has him as like a 1st-round prospect. I could see him running a really good 40 time and going in the 1st round, but for me, he is, I think, the most overhyped prospect in this year's draft class. Now, I'm not saying he's bad. I mean, there's always one of these players. Like last year, it was Darius Leonard to a little bit of an extent. And I'm just waiting for TRAYVON MULLEN to like tweet at me so he can become my guy this year. But I personally, I just think he's being overrated. I'm not saying he's a bad player. I think that he has a very high ceiling. But I just think right now, because of the height, weight, speed, he's coming from Clemson, a little bit overvalued for me. That's why he's coming at 7. But in terms of draft, he probably will go. There's a chance he goes in the 1st round. Probably will go in the 2nd round. For a grade value, I'd probably put 4th round for me personally. Going to corner number 6, we have JOEJUAN Williams, 6'2", 210, out of Vandy in 2018. 61 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 4 interceptions, and 13 pass breakups. We look at the positives, tremendous size. This guy is a long, lengthy, rangy corner. Most scouts agree he has some of the highest upside out of any corners in this year's draft class, and kind of like TRAYVON MULLEN, kind of like Michael Jackson, we talked about at 10. There is a chance that with his build, he could move to safety at some point. Maybe that is where his ceiling is going to be. Negatives for JOEJUAN Williams is he needs a good 40 at the combine. A good 40 could essentially shoot him up draft boards a lot because of the size. I think he's a little bit more fine, has a little bit more production than, say, TRAYVON MULLEN. They're kind of in the same boat. That's why they're ranked very similarly here in my rankings. But a good 40 for Williams is definitely going to help with his draft stock. Another negative from his game, and I noticed it against the game against my Florida Gators, and that's kind of when I first took note. I was like, man, this guy's not that bad, but he does not turn his head a lot in coverage. He'll get caught with a lot of that, you know, pass interference, and if he just got his head turned around, it wouldn't have been a PI call, which is so prevalent in today's National Football League. If you're a Philadelphia Eagle fan, we've seen that happen time and time again with our corners, and I definitely think that's something that they need to correct with Williams' game. But ultimately, very high ceiling, big body corner that I think should go, I would say rounds, I probably would have a round 3 grade on him right now, with a lot of upside for sure. Going to corner number 5, we have Amani Oruwariye, 6'1", 205 pounds, out of Penn State. In 2018, he had 50 tackles, tackles for loss, 3 picks, 11 pass breakups. Look at the positives. He is your prototypical lengthy zone corner. He is an underrated tackler. He likes to get after it in the run game, which is pretty much what you need when you're not an absolute burner. But I don't think, athletically speaking, it's going to be a weakness of his, just definitely not a strength. Look at the negatives, inconsistent decision-making. There was a bunch of times, especially Penn State fans thought that he was costing them games. He was blowing coverages. I didn't see it as much as a lot of Penn State fans started harping on it, because when I did my original rankings, I had him as a first-round player. I did my first mock draft. I think I had him going to the Steelers way back, like halfway through the college football season. And they're saying, you know, he's getting beat like a drum, this and that. And I didn't see as bad of play, but definitely wasn't super elite. So this is more so banking on the guy that's a prospect and his skill set, not so much his film, I would say. So because of that, I think he does need to have a good combine, which is another thing I have in his negatives, because the combine will be important to his draft stock, which it is kind of for every player. But for certain guys, you kind of know what you're already getting, and the combine just is more so confirmation bias that you know that they're good. For other players, they really are going to rely on those numbers. So that will be big for Oruwariye. But now we're in the top 5, so I'm going to start throwing out some pro comparisons. And I like throwing my own out because, you know, I love doing pro comparisons, what I like to see. I had trouble finding one that was different than the consensus. And this one's from NFL.com scouting report. They had Rasul Douglas for my Philadelphia Eagles, and I see a lot of similarities here. Rasul Douglas is not the fastest corner, but he's a big-bodied ball hawk that it can tackle, and he's really good at, you know, jamming up his wide receivers, getting in their face. So very similar there. So that is going to be my pro comparison. I agree with NFL.com for Amani Oruwariye. Go to number 4, corner 4. We have Julian Love, 5'11", 190 pounds, out of Notre Dame. In 2018, 63 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 1 interception, 16 pass breakups, and 1 touchdown. When you look at Julian Love, he is a great man cover corner and very aggressive when the ball is in the air. A very quick break. As soon as he sees, he can jump on over it and get it. And, you know, good closing ability, not a terrible tackler. Not, I think, you know, when I really look at him, I don't really see a glaring weakness. He's like kind of like the jack of all trades, master of none, which is still pretty damn good in today's NFL, with the cornerbacks feeling like they had like the highest bust rate. You know, if you had to guess like what corners, like high draft pick corners out of all the positions, maybe like quarterback could be the next. Guys that never really pan out. It always seems like cornerbacks is that one spot. I think a guy that's a safe prospect like Julian Love, you know, he's gonna get valued very well. And I think he's getting slept on just a little bit and should be definitely a second-round pick. When you look at the negatives for Julian Love, though, because he's not an amazing athlete, the combine will be important. As long as he, you know, tests in the middle, tests about what we expect, his draft stock shouldn't go somewhat unaffected. And the big question I have is, why so many little interceptions versus pass breakups? He gets like 15 to 20 pass breaks up a year, but I don't think he's ever had more than 3 interceptions in a single season. So I kind of feel like, you know, he's constantly around the ball, but could there be more interceptions there? So maybe question his ball skills a little bit, which is why I gave him the pro comparison of a Casey Hayward with less ball skills. Haha, pun intended. But, you know, Casey Hayward has been, you know, kind of a ball hawk a little bit over the last couple of years, a little bit of a resurgence since he left the Green Bay Packers to go to the Chargers. But he's definitely, you know, can find a way to get a lot of interceptions where, and you see right now for me, that's kind of like the big negative against Julian Love. Can you turn these pass breakups that, you know, you're constantly around the ball, but can you turn those into turnovers? Can you turn those into interceptions? Can you turn those into pick sixes? That's what I want to see. But from an athletic standpoint, from a technical standpoint, I see a lot of Casey Hayward when he was coming out of Vandy. And that was like way back when I first started having scouting reports. Like from now on, I'm saving like all my my draft notes and stuff like that, so I just don't have to like download my old videos. But yeah, that's my comp for Julian Love. Go to number 3. We have DeAndre Baker, 5'11", 185 pounds, out of Georgia. In 2018, he had 40 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 2 interceptions, and 9 pass breakups. Positives is that he's very physical for his size. He's a guy that's 5'11", 185. You're going to be like, all right, you're more of a finesse player. Not the case. He is in your face. He's aggressive at the line of scrimmage. I do think he will be a good man cover corner in the National Football League. Biggest negative for him is going to be his speed. There's not a lot of speed that shows up on tape. When you're 5'11", 185, you better be fast. You better be, I don't know how much you can get away being quicker than fast, at least in terms of being a first-round draft pick. So I think the combine's going to be big for DeAndre Baker. If he can run low 4.5s, he'll be fine. But there's a chance, man, he can run, if anything, over a 4.55. He might be getting ready to take that dip into the second round. So the combine is going to be big for him. Another one, he's kind of built like a slot corner, but he hasn't shown, what a slot corner is going to need to survive in today's NFL. Slot corners, some people will say, slot corners need to be your best corners, but I've always just kind of been on the side that your slot corner should hypothetically be your most athletic corner. And if DeAndre Baker's built like that, and he's definitely not going to be anywhere near the most athletic corner on any given roster, some questions could come up. But he's still a talented playmaker, and going to the right scheme, he will excel. My pro comparison from him is Malcolm Butler, who obviously, we know Malcolm Butler from his time with New England, and now with the Tennessee Titans. There's shown a lot of similarities, very similar body types, and I think that, it's a fair comp. I think Malcolm Butler might obviously be a little bit more refined of a player, but coming in as a rookie, there's a lot of similarities, and that's my comp, and I'm sticking with it. Going to corner number 2, we have Byron Murphy, 5'11", 180 pounds from Washington. In 2018, he had 58 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 4 interceptions. One of those was a pick 6 and 13 pass breakups. When you look at the positives, very quick, very fast, great speed. Pretty much your prototypical corner from an athletic standpoint, what you want from a first-round corner. He definitely excels in zone coverage. I think if you're a team like, maybe the Pittsburgh Steelers, he's probably your dream draft pick right now. But when we look at the negatives for Byron Murphy, negatives is smaller frame. Like, he is every bit 180. So you definitely want to try to bulk that up a little bit, try to get him close to 200 pounds as you can without losing any of that speed. And he will have, some issues tackling. He has an aggressive tackling style for a guy of that frame. And, you can get away with that at the college level. You can get away with that when you're tackling guys that aren't going to be making that jump to playing on Sundays. But when you go up against big wide receivers at the National Football League level, you're going to get burned more often than not when you're 180 pounds. You more so need to hold guys up until you get that help from the safety or one of your linebackers, which I think he can. But he has that aggressive mentality that I think he's going to have to just dial back a little bit here in the National Football League. Pro comparison for Byron Murphy, I see a lot of Marlon Humphrey. Obviously, he's like 10, 12 pounds lighter than Marlon Humphrey when Marlon Humphrey was coming out of Bama. But in terms of style, technique coming out of college, and athletic ability, speed, most importantly, I think that's pretty decent comp. Good idea what you're going to be getting for a Byron Murphy. The number 1 corner. A lot of people, it's one of those things, he's one of those prospects, I think a lot like Ed Oliver, that's been the top dog for so long. People are just constantly trying to look at the negatives and not really looking at the positives of them. And at number 1, I have Greedy Williams, 6'2", 185 pounds, out of LSU. In 2018, he had 33 tackles, 2 interceptions, 9 pass breakups. I think he had 6 interceptions in 2017, and his numbers kind of dropped in 2018 because he was so good, teams would just not throw his way. When you look at Greedy Williams, he has phenomenal ball skills. This guy's an absolute playmaker. If you throw it in his area and it's not on target, he is going to pick it off. I think he's a good athlete, fringe, great athlete. I'm going to be very interested to see what his combine is going to show, but he's not one of these players that the combine is going to be really big and influential on his draft stock. I think a lot of people already know what we're getting. And another thing is that he's a long rangier corner at 6'2", good long arms. And a common trend for long rangier corners is they have tight hips. They have tight hips. They're always going to struggle with the small, shiftier guys. I think he has pretty good hips for a long range, lengthy cornerback, which is definitely a big time positive. The negatives, really only one negative. I think he's not a willing tackler in run support more often than not. And that's what you get with a lot of finesse corners. Even though in today's National Football League, you kind of want guys that can tackle over the place, still, you look at the top tier corners in the National Football League, you could still probably say for a lot of them, they're not the greatest tacklers in the world. I think Greedy Williams kind of falls along in those parameters. But, I mean, it is what it is. I want my corners ultimately to pick the ball off, to shut down wide receiver ones. They kind of lack in run support a little bit, so be it. But that's just me. Pro comparison, I see a lot of Marcus Peters in him. Not so much the off-the-field issues that Marcus Peters has had that ultimately probably led to his departure in Kansas City. But I do see a guy that is just going to live and die by his ability to make plays on the ball. Sometimes you might be able to get past him, might be able to beat him. But then another time he'll get an interception or something like that in that game. So I think if you need a franchise corner, look no further than Greedy Williams. And pretty much all these guys. So we said Julian Love's second round, fringe first rounder. I think DeAndre Baker's first round, fringe second rounder. And then Byron Murphy and now Greedy Williams. Those are the two corners I think, without a shadow of a doubt, are locks to go in the first round. I would grade them both within the top 20. So there you go, guys. Those are my top 10 corners for the upcoming 2019 draft. As always, if you agree or disagree with my rankings, let me know in the comment section below. If I'm sleeping on a guy or something like that, Always like hearing what prospects I might have missed. We still have the safety video to come. That will be, I think, dropping on Friday, so make sure you don't miss it on that. As always, if it's your first time stopping by, don't be afraid to hit that subscribe button. Smash the like button if you enjoyed. And until next time, it's C4 saying peace out.